Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim viewers, I welcome you all to the second lecture of psychology. Previously, we discussed the psychology, its components like feelings or the thoughts, feelings and behaviors, or in other words, action of an individual. According to the feeling, it develops to some thoughts in the mind. Sorry. In the next lecture, or in the current lecture, or the second lecture, we will be discussing the biological basis of behavior. That what biological components or what biological events are involved in the behavior building or the behavioral psychology. So, if we go into the definition of this biological psychology, it is the branch of psychology that studies the biological foundation of behavior. मतलब उसके बुनियाद से कि ये behavior बना कैसे, ठीक है? And behavior, then emotions and mental process. If you look at this definition, this is in a reverse manner that was discussed in psychology, that it start from the thought and end at the behavior. Okay, so here the biological foundation is ruled out, that the behavior is developed to some emotions which is developed against some thoughts. सबसे पहले कोई भी मेंटल प्रोसेस है. मेंटल प्रोसेस क्या है कि आपके जहन में कुछ सोच है, उसके मुताबिक आपके इमोशंस या फीलिंग्स डेवलप होती हैं, एंड आफ्टर दैट आप कुछ ख़ास तरीके से बिहेव करते होते हैं. ठीक है, तो इसका जब बायोलॉजिकली हम रूट तक पहुंचते होते हैं, उसको स्टडी करते हैं कि कौन कौन से कंपोनेंट्स उसमें हो सकते हैं, हर एक के फिर फंक्शंस क्या हैं. सो दिस ऑल कम्स इन द बायोलॉजिकल साइकोलॉजी. So, finding biological cause of how we think, feel, and act. Again, this is a repetition of the definition. The biological system that affect behavior include the nervous system and endocrine system. नर्वस सिस्टम में फर्दर फिर दो मेजर पार्ट्स बनते होते हैं. वन इज द सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम which include the brain and spinal cord, and the second one is peripheral nervous system, which include all those peripheral nerve fibers, their endings, the ganglions, the synapses. Okay, so actually the central nervous system is something which receive the information from peripheral parts of the body. Okay, like for example हमारे nails से लेके skin, हमारे जितने भी muscles हैं, जहाँ पे भी कोई प्रॉब्लम है या जहाँ पे भी कुछ ना कुछ होता है, तो वहाँ से कुछ सेंसेस वो परसीव करते हैं, एंड उन परसीव करके ये जो पेरिफेरल नर्वस सिस्टम है इसको लेके जाता होता है टुवर्ड्स द स्पाइनल कॉर्ड एंड इन द ब्रेन. इन द ब्रेन दीज सेंसेस आर देन स्टोर्ड, एंड आफ्टर दैट some they are categorized into various like senses, and after that according to those sense classes or orders there are some decision made, and according to the decisions some actions are planned which are again sent to the peripheral nervous system, to the peripheral organs. Okay, the second one is endocrine system. Endocrine system is like it is a system built up of all those glands, endocrine glands. Now you might have heard about the endocrine, the exocrine glands. So if we are talking about endocrine, the endocrine mean they will be secreting their products, whatever their product is, they will be secreting that directly into the blood, and through blood that will move on and will affect the target organ. Okay, so we'll now be like dissecting this topic further. Okay, again this is what I already discussed, that the central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, which is responsible for the sensory activities, storing memories and emotions, and then sorting out those, or segregation, or in other words categorization of those sensory मैसेजेस और द हम कह सकते हैं कि जितने भी मेमोरीज या इमोशंस हैं उन सबको कैटेगराइज कर लेते होते हैं. देन पेरिफेरल नर्वस सिस्टम, इट इज़ एक्चुअली अ ब्रिज बिटवीन द, लाइक हम जैसे कहते हैं एंड बेनिफिशरी वर्ड हम यूज़ करते होते हैं, इसी तरह इफेक्टर अर्गन्स हम यूज़ करते होते हैं. तो जो अर्गन है जहाँ से कोई ना कोई मतलब एक इवेंट वहाँ से रिसीव हुआ है या वहाँ को कुछ मैसेजेस जाने हैं, तो वहाँ से किसी सेंस को रिसीव करना, ब्रेन तक लेके जाना, ब्रेन उसको कैटेगराइज करके उसके मुताबिक कोई डिसीजन ले लेता है, एंड दैट डिसीजन इज देन कन्वेड बैक to the peripheral nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system get that message and provide it to the effector organ again. ठीक है. So this is a bridge which consists of these the nerve fibers, the ganglions, the nerve endings. Okay. Okay, the peripheral nervous system is further then divided into somatic nervous system. SNS भी हम short कहते होते हैं in medical terminologies. The second one is the autonomic nervous system, or it is also termed in short as ANS. The somatic nervous system usually control all the voluntary movements like what are in our control, like the muscle movements, the skeletal muscle movement. Now, if we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, they are usually involved in control of the involuntary actions of the body, like smooth muscle, like the cardiac muscles. They are not in anyone's control except the brain, and that is the division of autonomic nervous system is controlling those involuntary movement. If it is working properly, these smooth cardiac muscles will be working in a good way, in a normal way. If that is having some problem, then these involuntary movements like the heart, like the intestine, like the eye pupil, or the vessels, arteries, these all can have deviation from the normal movements or the normal function. Then the autonomic nervous system is further divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. One of them, like the sympathetic one, is controlling the fight or flight condition. Like you might have heard about adrenaline and noradrenaline, or in other words, they are also called as epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are usually concerned with those fight and flight condition, emergency moved. The second one is parasympathetic nervous system that is regulating all the normal movement. Like I discussed that this autonomic nervous system is controlling all the vital functions of the body which are involuntary, like the peristaltic movement of the intestine, similarly the respiratory smooth muscles, similarly the cardiac muscles. So these all normal functions are under the control of the parasympathetic nervous system, and if there is any emergency, then sympathetic nervous system comes into action. Okay, again it is a good picture and a repetition, like registering sensation means it is a reception point. Okay, first it receive all the information from the peripheral nervous system, which is taking that from the effector organ. That is then registered and then segregated into various categories, and after that, that means the correlating with the stored information, that is this the categorization of that, then making decision and taking action. Now this action has to be taken by the effector organs, and this goes through the peripheral nervous system again from the brain. So in the peripheral nervous system there is a two-way traffic while the brain is receiving it. Okay, now peripheral nervous system carries information to and from the central nervous system. We already discussed it in a bit more detail, and the components of the peripheral nervous system include the sensory receptors, which senses, which receive the information and take it to the brain. Then the motor ending, those ending through which actions are the planned actions are like disseminated or received back in the effector organ. Then the nerve fibers through which those all messages comes from the brain to the effector organ, and from the effector organ to the brain. This last one is the ganglia which is making that bunch. Okay, the last one is the last component of this biological system, which is regulating the psychology, is the endocrine system. You will see various glands like the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal cortex, the pancreas, adrenal medulla, ovaries in female and testes in male. So these all are the endocrine glands, and the endocrine glands means those glands which secrete their product directly into the blood rather than through any duct. Like for example, we see like in the from the liver, things goes to through the duct system, and then into the intestine through the common bile duct. Similarly, there are also other glands which secrete their products, like the sweat glands, like the sebaceous gland. These are exocrine, endocrine glands. But if you are talking about the listed one, like the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, all these are endocrine glands. They will be secreting their products into the blood. And now, if you look at the hierarchy of these glands, hypothalamus is in biological sciences and medical sciences, in all those physiological sciences what we study. Hypothalamus is the principal gland which direct something which is received from the brain to the pituitary, and then pituitary disseminate that message to all the other glands concerned. For example, if we are talking about like stress, if there is stress, the hypothalamus will releasing hormones. Those releasing hormone will go into the pituitary, and pituitary will then secrete the ACTH, and ACTH will go to the adrenal gland, and where the cortisol will be produced. Okay. Similarly, if we look into the hypothalamus again, if it is about the thyroid function, hypothalamus will be directing pituitary through the releasing hormone for the thyroid function, the TSH. Then the pituitary will release the TSH, that is the thyroid stimulating hormone, and the TSH will then act on the thyroid to produce the thyroxine and other enzymes they normally produce. So this all is a hierarchy, and this is the normal way the endocrine system works. The hypothalamus in the brain will have a principal role which will be directing pituitary, and then pituitary will be directing all other endocrine glands. So in all this phenomena, the hormone will be going through blood, and that will be connecting only to the receptors on certain gland. Like for example, for the hypothalamus messages or the hormones which is secreted into the blood, that will only attach to the pituitary, and from pituitary, when it secretes some specific hormone targeting specific gland, will bind to that specific gland only, because these glands have specific receptors with which that specific hormone will has to bind. Okay, so this is the whole story of the biological basis. All these systems like the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the endocrine system, these all in a hierarchy way, in a harmonious way, keep that homeostasis, and helps in developing and first perceiving some thinkings or thoughts, after that building some emotions, and according to that some actions or behavior is made or built accordingly. So this is the whole story of the biological processes which occur in the behavioral psychology.